we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach, here from the Giants. But they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting, main event here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, and we have a stacked show coming for you today. Of course, we have great fights coming up this weekend we're going to talk about in just a minute, but later on we're going to be talking to our man Chris Lights Out Lytle, of course, the color analyst, former fighter for the BKFC, who's going to be making that long trek over the pond, over to Marbella, Spain. We're going to pick his brain on what is going to be happening there as we get our first ever card in Spain. Also going to find out from him what happened out in Utah. Just had some tryouts. Well, for sure we'll get some footage and some breakdown of that later on the BKFC app and site. But he was there. He was running things as he does with most of the tryouts, if not all of them, for the BKFC. Find out some of the people that he saw and maybe even get some names of people to watch out for, possibly coming down the line with the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships, one of these Prospect Series cards. We'll also then catch up with two guys who are going to be facing each other later on this month. Of course, you have that dark show we talked about last week being announced for the first time October 26th in Myrtle Beach. The day after we have that show out in Denver, you're going to have a rematch of two guys who had unfinished business, both of them not liking that one no contest that's on their record because of, unfortunately, a unintentional shot to the back of the head. We will talk to first featherweight Brandon Bushaw about that fight, and then also talk to Slick Rick Caruso, his opponent. Two guys going to be matching up again to find out who is the best. If you read the articles about them on the BKFC app and website, both of them pretty much word for word almost saying that they hate how that last fight ended. They would rather almost have a loss than have a no contest on their record. And they, once the fight was over, begging to get it going again. So we'll see, how they both feel about it coming into it now, and maybe even find out why it took us to this point to get it. Why we have the immediate rematch. We'll talk to both Brandon Bushaw and Slick Rick Caruso about their upcoming fight at the end of the month. And then we're going to wrap things up talking about some other fights that are going to be going on with this Marbella card, because it is just stacked from top to bottom. So we're going to give you a breakdown right now. We'll start it with the show with that. And then you know what? We're going to circle back around and finish it as well, because there are just so many names that we got to talk about and mention. We are just not going to have enough time in this first segment. So let's get right into it. This is the first card ever for the BKFC in Spain. This is the first ever card for the BKFC on DAZN. That's right. Don't forget, they just did that deal with DAZN. I don't believe this is one where you'll be able to watch it on the BKFC app. You got to go get that new subscription if you want to check out this card live down in Marbella, Spain, in the bullfighting ring, of course, as well, which is going to play some intrigue. I'm going to talk to Lights Out Lytle about that next because this is an outdoor venue. Now, we have some experience with that, of course. Denton just did Sturgis, the bike rally. But I think the weather is going to be a lot different in Spain than it was out in Sturgis from what I'm seeing. It looks like there's about rain for the next 2 months. So I don't know how protected the ring's going to be or if the wind can blow some of that in and make it slick for the fighters. I don't know how the fans are going to be out there dealing with the weather or the broadcasters. We'll have to find all that out as we go along. But right now, going to be a little bit different out in the middle of a bullfighting ring in Marbella, Spain. That is what we will see coming up this weekend. And it's going to be headlined by 3 title fights, 3 of them. Very intriguing, too, because, we've seen situations where UK championship belts have been put up. Well, not even put up, but the UK champion fighter has fought against someone from outside the UK, don't win the belt, as we saw with Jared Warren against Danny Christie, who we'll talk about in just a bit. Now you're going to have 3 guys from the UK, or from Europe at least, fighting against champions in the BKFC in the US side of things. So what happens with that belt if they win it? Do they have to defend in both the UK and the US, or they just focus on the US then? All that is questions I will have to ask if they win those titles, of course, because first up, lightweight title, Franco Tenaglia versus, of course, Tony Loco Soto. Tenaglia is the lightweight champ in the UK after he beat James Lights Out Lilly. He is undefeated, 3-0, the Argentinian who now makes his home in Spain. He'll be fighting Tony Loco Soto, the guy who's been on this show a lot of times, but not recently because he's been waiting for a long time for his next fight. His last win, of course, was October of last year against Kevin Kroom, so over a year. He's 6-0 in the BKFC. Beat guys like Tyler Goodjohn before that, so has been running through names in the BKFC lightweight division for a long time, was hunting for that title shot, was trying to get that shot, of course, against the then champ, Luis Baboon Palomino, the double champ at the time, the pound-for-pound king of the BKFC. All that is unraveled now, partially because of a guy we'll talk about in the next fight, partially because of things unknown, because he still held this lightweight title, has never lost it, but now it is given up. It is up for grabs, and it will be up between the UK champion in Franco Tenaglia and Tony Loco Soto, who walks away with that title. Of course, Soto, very big volume guy. He can come in there. He doesn't get tired. He'll go all 5 with you. I think that was a big thing in his Goodjohn fight where he didn't tire and at the end kept coming forward and maybe scored those extra rounds at the end of the fight in order to take that from Tyler Goodjohn. Franco Tenaglia, he's got cardio. He can go all 5, but he's also got power. We saw that against James Lights Out Lilly. He put him to the deck a couple times. A tough guy in Lilly. No slouch at all. So for him to be able to knock him down, and you got to give him credit for getting back up, but still some big power out of those fists. So is it going to be Tenaglia putting Soto to the mat and getting those extra 10-8 rounds or even getting a stoppage? Or is Soto going to come in here and use that extra cardio in order to, outpoint him and get us to the end of this fight and put it in the judge's hands? I don't know. I want to go with Soto. We've been waiting for him. I thought he'd be perfect for this title fight, but after watching Tenaglia versus Lilly, that's going to be hard to do. I know Soto's more focused than ever. Quit his job as a corrections officer down in the Carolinas to focus full-time on fighting, opened up his own school. But I just think the power difference might be a big factor here as we get into this. So, although we know Soto, Brooklyn tough, former pro skateboarder, this guy's not going to back away from any challenge or any fight. So even if he gets dropped a few times, might still be there in the 4th and 5th round to try to outgas his opponent. We'll see. Then, of course, as we said, the welterweight title on the line, this formerly Palomino's belt, now in the hands of Austin No Doubt Trout, who took it off Palomino in February. It's 2-0 in the BKFC. The former championship glove boxer came into the BKFC. People said, oh, sure, yeah, he's great there, but that doesn't translate here. It's different once you take off the gloves. Beat Diego Sanchez in his first fight. People still, poo-pooed that a little bit, saying Diego Sanchez is well done in fighting, shouldn't still be fighting. He was a MMA guy, not a true bare knuckle guy. Goes against Palomino and takes that fight. Some people were going to question the judging, of course. Palomino does. But this is still the man who holds the title. He showed up in that fight. He showed how good he is and how good he's always been and that he could translate that to this sport. Now he goes against a guy, Enrico Franco, who's more of a power puncher than he did in Palomino, who has a lot more dangerous fists there. 3-0 coming off his win over Franco Harris in Newcastle last June. He's got a lot of power there. Against Caleb Harris, Lionheart Harris. Last June, put him to the mat. I think it was 9 times in that fight. Lionheart kept getting up, but still that's tough against a guy with Franco's power. So there's no doubt Trout use that ability to avoid those shots, or does Rico Franco get the powerful shots in there and end this fight? In this case, I'm going to stick with Trout. This is a big-time experience. None of these guys have faced something like this, except for maybe, no doubt, Trout in some of the big fights that he's had in his glove boxing career. I think he sticks it out and gets the decision win. Then the middleweight title on the line. Dave Mundell, the redneck, has been waiting to defend this title for a long time, ever since he beat Coltrane last year. The guy he's wanted to fight for, though, hasn't been interested in Mike Perry, so he's kind of been on the shelf there. Last November was the last time he fought, been looking for a fight, been training hard. A lot of guys avoiding this champion. Has wins over Grosu, Lane, Ricci, and Richmond. So he's beaten everybody and anyone. 8-1 in the BKFC, going against Danny Christie, a guy who looks like he's ready, looks like he's ripped, looks like he's focused. Of course, he was a former light heavyweight champ in the UK. He lost to Jared Warren, a teammate of Mundell. So does that give him a little bit of an edge there? We will see. But then has dropped down to this weight class, feeling like it is much better for him than putting on the extra weight. Now he had a great fight over in the UK after that against Jimmy Lar in June. Now really testing himself against the best of the best in the middleweight division for the BKFC so far, and that is Dave, the redneck Mundell. There's a lot of power in Christie's fists. He's a tough dude. I still have to see Mundell get beat again before I can believe it. I know he has that one loss, but it's been a long time since he had that loss. And then you even have James Lights Out Lilly trying to bounce back from his loss against Tenagli here in this fight against Filippo da Silva Maia, a former BJJ champion who now makes his home in Europe, 1-1 in the BKFC. A big opportunity for Lilly. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of questions about him with his third loss in a row. When we come back, we'll break down the fight for our man Chris Lights Out Lytle.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last 3 running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not genius.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
If you're sliding DiVincenzo to the 1, obviously Terrence Shannon Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid as we continue to look forward to what we have coming this weekend. A great card, getting back into action, going over to Europe. First time ever in Spain for the BKFC. Fighting in a bull ring. What could be better? And we're going to talk to our man Chris Lights Out Lytle about everything going on as he gets ready to head over to Spain right now. Before we get to this card, though, Chris, you just had some more tryouts this weekend for the first time in a while. I know how much you like that and how much that has added to, obviously, the roster of the BKFC. We've seen some more and more of these fighters start to get added to the main cards as well. What was it like out there in Utah at FightCon? How did it go? What was the talent level like? And how was the experience for you?
Oh, fantastic. I love going out to Salt Lake. Always a good time there. But, man, a lot of talent. We haven't put a fight on, or a tryout in a while, I should say. So we had people from California coming out. That's close. We had people from New Jersey. That's not close. We had people from Maryland. Ooh. We had a guy from Lithuania, flew himself over from Lithuania, came here, looked fantastic. We're going to find him a place. I don't know if we'll find him in the States or over in Europe somewhere, but, man, people are really wanting to be part of what we're doing, and we haven't put a tryout in a while, so it showed people are really coming from far away to be part of it.
It's awesome to see. I'm sure being around all the different fight things going on there as well with FightCon. I know there are other fights in town as well, so plenty of action, I'm sure, and a lot of great experiences always. Look forward to seeing the talent that we have coming out of there and into the Prospect Series and hopefully even into the BKFC later on. Was there anybody in particular that stood out to you that we should be looking out for, or is there, what was the turnout like? Was it bigger because of being at FightCon, or what was the overall things that we should look out for coming from this?
I don't know. I think here we'll probably put a couple guys on the California card from the Prospect. And that's coming up here before too terribly long. We'll do that, and I know. Like I said, our Lithuanian friend, I'm sure probably as soon as we get the card set up over maybe in Bulgaria or England, I'm sure he'll probably be on one of those next ones. So be paying attention to somebody from the area, from the region of Lithuania, getting on the card here soon.
That's quite a trip to go all the way to Salt Lake for tryouts, but it shows the kind of commitment and drive people have to try to be part of this organization now as it continues to grow. And as we said, first ever card in Spain. They've obviously done the UK, Bulgaria, Thailand, but now to Spain for the first time in Marbella. First card on DAZN as well. For fans who didn't remember that, obviously with the big DAZN deal kicking in here, first ever card on there. What's it like for you? Any changes? Any things that some insight on maybe some things behind the scenes that might be different for people that they're looking forward to with the new broadcast partner? Or is it just gonna be business as usual for you guys, calling great fights and looking for some awesome action?
I mean, the main thing, it may be a little more bells and whistles, but the main thing that really the meat of what we do is put on great fights. That's the main thing that I see is that's what people want to watch this for. People come, they put on great fights, they go out there, and they try to take people out. That's what people want to see. I don't want to see a lot of people out there trying to outpoint somebody. I want to see people who are going to go out there and try and dominate their opponent, finish the fight. I don't want any of these going the distance, and that's what we bring to the table. So I think you can dress it up with everything else, which is great. I appreciate that. But the main thing, you have to have a good product, and I think that's what we have.
Now, we're also going to see, obviously a different situation that's fighting in this bullfighting ring. I know the BKFC has done outdoor venues before. We just had, of course, out there at Sturgis. But what's it going to be like? Have you seen any of the setup coming in here? Because obviously there's no roof on it. You're fighting outside. I don't know if they're going to have some kind of a tarp or something over the ring itself, because looking at the weather, it doesn't look like it's going to be too cooperative. What's going on there? How do the fighters deal with being in a different atmosphere of being outside in this as opposed to fighting inside in an arena or things like that? What are some of the things that might affect the fighters in this different venue?
You know what? The good news is it'd be one thing if it affected one fighter and not the other one. It doesn't. It's going to affect both guys the same. So you just have to focus on, I don't care if you're fighting, indoor, out there, outdoors, altitude, or you're fighting on the moon. It doesn't matter. You just have to go out there, focus on the task at hand. That's to go out there and punch that guy, trying to, outscore your opponent, knock him out, and do what they have to do. So the fighters really just got to focus on that. Don't focus on the weather. Don't focus on whether you're inside, outside, and bullfighting in the ring. I don't care if you're in the gym. Whatever, you just got to focus on that one opponent. That's what they got to do.
We're looking forward to seeing what happens. Hopefully, the weather report that I'm seeing is wrong. Hopefully we get, we can make sure we have some good footing, so we don't want anything to be changed by, the different scenario. I'm sure the acoustics going to be a lot different, I'm sure, as well for fighters using, having that sound right on top of them with the roof. Maybe some of that, maybe it's a little less loud, maybe it's a little more loud. Who knows? All of this stuff is going to be new for fighting in Spain. In this bullfighting ring, in this great arena, in this great place where they have a lot of history, I'm sure. And I'm looking forward to seeing all that happen, looking forward to seeing you call that. So why don't we start breaking down some of these fights? Right at the top, we have Loco Soto versus Franco Tenaglia, two of the craziest guys on the roster on either side of the pond, now meeting up. Tony Soto, of course, been waiting for this title shot for a long time. I don't think he expected to be coming against Franco Tenaglia. I know he was chasing, of course, Luis Palomino for the long time, who known that belt is, given up. And he's fighting for it against Knuckle, who just got the UK belt against Lily. This is going to be a very interesting fight of who controls the style with the frenetic pace of Soto or the sheer power that could put you on your butt in one punch in Tenaglia.
I mean, you put it right. Exactly what you said. Tenaglia, heavy-handed. I think his best chance of winning the first 2 rounds, all he has to do is land one of those power shots. But as the fight goes on, they wear down. You get tired of those power shots. They come a little bit slower. You can see more. So I feel like either he's going to win the first 2 rounds or Soto's probably going to outpoint him and beat him up as the fight goes on. So I look for Soto to win late or Tenaglia to win early.
All going to be about who gets their dominant position, their dominant control of how it goes, and that's going to be very important. I'm very interested to see how this goes. Who gets that belt and what happens with that division afterwards, because it's kind of been in limbo at times before with, of course, the dual belts of Palomino. Now, of course, you're going to have one champion, although Tenaglia has that UK belt, so you have to go defend it there and the US. If he gets both, we will see. But you also have a welterweight championship bout between Austin No Doubt Trout and Rico Franco. Speaking of Palomino, a guy, who people thought, No Doubt Trout, okay, he had a nice fight. He's not going to be able to do this against this champ, the pound-for-pound best. But also No Doubt Trout did that, showed his championship medal. We're going to take a quick break, though. Unfortunately, before we get Chris, I don't want to cut you off short and have you give, your short answer here. I want the real answer of how you feel about this fight with No Doubt Trout and his first title defense. Is he going to be a true bare-knuckle champion, defend that belt, and show that he is one of the best in this sport as well, like he used to be in boxing with gloves? Or is this going to be a short reign for him against Rico Franco? We'll be right back here on SportsGrid.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number 1 overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number 1 overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
If you're sliding DiVincenzo to the what? Obviously, Terrence Ciano Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division is not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. And we started doing a little bit of preview before we got out to the break here with Chris Lights Out Lytle on this co-headlining fight, title fight at welterweight, Austin Trout, Rico Franco. Now, Chris, as we said, after coming off that Sanchez win, everyone said, okay, that's nice for Trout, but Diego Sanchez probably not in his best. So I don't know if we really count that. Right in there against Palomino, the guy who was the pound-for-pound king at the time, and he takes his title in his hometown. So people had to take notice and, realize that this guy's legit, but now he goes against a beast here in Rico Franco, who, just coming off of some big wins left and right over there in the UK. Does he hold up as a champion in his first title defense and show people that this is really where he belongs?
Well, that's going to be the thing. Franco does have bare knuckle experience, but actual ring time, actual being involved with fighting for just years and years and years, Trout has that pedigree. So is it going to be that years of experience, or is it going to be that bare knuckle that's going to win out? I don't know. We'll have to find out. But Trout learned a lot, you can tell, from his first few fights. He's a boxer, but he's learned how to be a bare knuckle fighter. If he continues to grow at that level that he's been growing already, I think he has a great chance of winning and defending that title.
We'll look forward to that. And then, of course, the third title fight on this card is two guys that, had success at upper weights and then dropped down and said, this is probably better for me. And now they face each other for the title held by the redneck Dave Mundell, a guy who's been on the pine there for a while, just hunting for that fight, that title defense against, of course, Platinum Mike Perry, who just seemed completely disinterested in fighting him. So he's kind of been waiting for a while to see Mundell get back in there after he defended his title against Coltrane. But, he used to fight up at 205, dropped down, took this title eventually, and now he faces a guy, Enrico Franco, who did the same thing overseas in the UK. He was the light heavyweight champion in the UK, decided, this isn't the best weight for me. After losing to Mundell's teammate Jared Warren, drops down and now fights for this title. Do you think that extra experience, they're both going to be similar as far as, strength, weight, those things, because they both, have had the success in dropping down. But does that Jared Warren fight give Mundell a little extra insight into this opponent to know how to beat him?
He's got to be careful, because what it might do, it might give him a little overconfidence. He might go in there and he might be doing well against Jared Warren or whatever. He knows my teammate beat this guy. But, this is a strange sport. It just takes one shot. And one of those shots that, Jared Warren landed early, it might have changed the complexion of that fight. If you go in there not really respecting this guy, not thinking he's going to come out at his best, you might be in for a long night. Because Christie, he's looked phenomenal besides one fight. So you almost got to throw that out, because you never know what one punch did. So if Mundell's not taking Christie serious, Christie could definitely come and surprise him.
And of course, biggest thing of fighting, not just the physical, but a lot of it is the mental, as as a former fighter, as someone who's been around fighting for most of your life. The mental aspect is huge. And Mundell is coming in here with things going on at home right now. That hurricane barreling right for Tampa once again after they just got done with the one they faced before after Helene. They have another one coming through now. And I'm sure he's got thoughts and wishes about his family and his friends that are there, and like Jared Warren and Crystal Pittman and others who have been dealing with things. I know there's been a lot of devastation through Tampa Bay, so our thoughts are with them, and hopefully that doesn't affect this fight negatively for Dave Mundell, and he's able to stay focused and still give his best against a very tough opponent in Christie. But also another guy who's fought for a title, didn't get all the way to that gold, but James Lights Out Lilly had his chance, just fell a little short against Palomino, who seems to be a common connection through a lot of these fights here, a little 6 degrees of separation. But now he's trying to get back on the winning ways. He's lost back-to-back fights now. To, of course, Palomino, then to Naglia. So tough guys. It's not like he's just losing to guys. You're like, how are you getting beat by them? But still, coming off back-to-back losses, that could shake confidence at times. Now fighting in Felipe de Silva Maya, who is coming off his own loss. How do you see this one? Does a situation where we can get Lights Out Lilly back to where we saw him earlier in his career in the BKFC?
Man, here's the thing with the last fight when he fought Tanaglia, that really showed me how tough James Lilly is, because he got hit with a punch. I thought he knocked his head off. I was like, he's done. He got knocked out. Gets right back up and continues to fight, and fights well. I think he's a very good fighter. It's a tough sport. Everybody loses, but he's fought a couple beasts. I think he's really going to, try and get his stuff together and come out there and show what he's made of and get a win back to get back in the win column. But if not, he's got to really start really evaluating his career, because 3 losses in a row, where are you going? So there's a lot on the line for James Lilly this fight. I think he knows it. I think we're going to see his A game.
And of course, we have some big name debuts here. Nick Chapman coming in there, has a great boxing career, was almost an Olympian, but nearly died and then had to kind of, relearn everything from a motorcycle accident. A great story there to see him now with the BKFC. He's had a lot of experience over there in the UK. And Hannah Rankin, of course, as well, the classical warrior who, we talk about Lights Out Lilly with his poetry, a classical bassoonist. Actually has a degree in that, not fighting, but we'll see what she can do in her first fight in the BKFC. Chris Lights Out Lyle, thank you so much, and have a safe trip over Spain.
Thanks.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last three running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. And of course, we have great action coming up this weekend from Spain, but we got a lot of action coming up throughout the rest of the month. So we got to start looking ahead and talking to some of these fighters that are going to be coming down the line for us and throwing fists towards the end of this month. October 26th is one of those cards we talked about it last week. A Prospect Series card that's going to be coming up. You got a back-to-back weekend there, 25th, 26th, with fights in action for the BKFC. And one of the guys who's going to be headlining that Myrtle Beach card is Brandon Bushaw, who's going to be joining us right now and talking about this fight he has coming up against Rick Caruso. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us. I know you got a lot going on, throughout your life, not just fighting, but you have, of course, your career, your 9-to-5 that you work. You have a new gym that you opened up as well. Why don't we talk about that first, about some of the things you got going on. Congratulations on the new gym where you're teaching a lot of wrestling, and I see even doing some specialty classes for maybe an underserved part of the sports world, when you have your female-only classes at your gym as well.
Yeah. So, of course, it was not on my bingo card for 2024 to open a wrestling academy with my wife, but here we are. The opportunity presented itself. And we've expanded. My daughter's been wrestling now for 3 years, and it's certainly it's the fastest growing sport in the country with women's wrestling. And, she's always around boys down here, and we travel to Pennsylvania, and she wrestles on teams up there. And now we are in a position where we can offer a girls-only class every Monday, and that's been growing like crazy, and we have more and more girls. I think we had 8 or 9 at the last class, and we're working on getting more and more up there. 6 or 7 are in Aria's class, so if they stick with it and they graduate high school together, they're definitely gonna lay their stamp on the wrestling world here in a few years.
And what has brought that about for you? Is it that your own daughter and her wrestling has made you want to focus on that a little bit at times too, and give a little more attention to women's wrestling and get that bigger and help to grow that? Is that something that you've always kind of had that passion for throughout your background as a wrestler? What's been the big drive to A, to open the school, and B, to kind of make that push into the women's end of that, which is, of course, as we said, very underrepresented at times, until, maybe you hear about the Olympics every 4 years and all of a sudden you see American women do some great things over there. What was the inspiration for you?
Well, I didn't really plan on getting back into wrestling, to be fully committed. And about 3 years ago, she said, "Hey, Daddy, I think I want to try wrestling." And we hit the ground running from there. There are growing opportunities here in South Carolina, but we found a home with her with the Misfits Girls Wrestling Club up in Pennsylvania. They open her with with open arms. We've gone up there 10, 12 times to compete with them, and really love what they're doing and the way they're impacting these young ladies and giving them opportunities. And we just want to do our part down here. There's certainly a need for it. And we couldn't be happier. The growth of it. We were just up. She wrestled with Wyoming Seminary at Ultimate Club Duels. There were nearly 500 girls and 24 girls dual teams. So it's really great to watch. The community is really, really supportive of each other, and we love being a part of it. And we want more girls to realize that it's not just a sport for the guys. But girls find success with it, and there are more opportunities coming up for them to wrestle girls only. My daughter probably wrestled 90 matches this summer, and probably 80 were against females only. So we're trying to do our part and keep the growth going, and we're excited to do it. And the gym, it just so happened the founder of the Carolina Reapers, his youngest is now a senior in high school. So the youth, it was kind of a gap there, and we just had a talk, and I was like, look, how about we take over the club? You focus on your boy, and we'll work on these the young ones and getting the next wave of great wrestlers coming through. So we're excited.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, my daughter she's only 2.5 right now, but one of her favorite things to do is tackle daddy and tackle her younger brother. So my family has a place down in Myrtle Beach, or maybe sometimes we're on vacation. I might have to bring her in and have her you work with her, because her form's a little iffy right now, but she definitely gets her results, knocking me down whenever she gets a chance. But great job on you to put that work in for the youth and for your daughter and for growing the sport as it is, as a whole. But now you also, that's not even your only focus, obviously, and neither is fighting. You have your regular job as a real estate broker down there as well. How hard is it to balance everything that you have going on between real estate, between what you're doing for wrestling down there in North Carolina, and then focusing on yourself and your training as well?
Yeah, it's it's the way, if it's feast or famine. So it seems like every time I book a fight, real estate it just gets slammed, which is a beautiful thing. So it's just a matter of managing your time, making sure that you're there for everybody that you commit to, and not to overextend yourself. So I don't want to be so busy that I'm lacking when it comes to coaching or training for my fight or being there for my clients in the real estate world. So it's been pretty exciting to kind of tie everything together. Some of my main sponsors for my fight and for the wrestling club are all from the real estate world, from Revolution Mortgage and Tide Law, and these people that we do closings with. So it's really cool to see it come full circle, and they both kind of go hand in hand. You wouldn't think so, but they really do. So I love it. And like they say, it's cliche, but you never work if you love what you do, and that's kind of where we are right now. I love coming to the gym at night, and I love going to show property during the day, and late night hitting the computer and getting all that work done. So it keeps me busy, but I love it, man. I'm not one to sit around and hang out on the couch too long.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I know we got Jomi Escoboza. I believe there's a lot of real estate down in Miami. I know we have a lot of home. I think Christine Vicenz runs a home building company and construction company. Other builders and whatnot throughout the BKFC. I mean, if we get all the fighters together, we might be having a nationwide conglomerate going here. We'll have to work on that, get a whole union going of you guys. But great work and everything you're doing, and of course in the fighting as well, is what we love the most here on Bare Knuckle Fighting Main Event. 2-0 so far in the BKFC. You have this fight, this rematch, of course, against Caruso. How did you see that first fight going before it was ultimately ended by the refs because of the unintentional shot to the head? What did you see as you were going in through that fight before the stoppage?
Yeah. So I'm 2-0-1, right? And that's kind of like a thorn in my side. I don't like the that third number in there. No, Rick's a tough guy. But I think I was really green in that fight. My first fight was relatively quick. I didn't have enough time in between to really develop more skill set and everything. The difference between my second fight and my third fight, I think, was significant, and I really like my chances. Like I said, Rick caught me with some jabs, and he got me with a good body shot, but I really like my chances. I'm beyond thankful to Mr. Feldman, Andy Hall for putting this together. I get a chance at vengeance. Obviously, I didn't mean to hit him in the back of the head. When I watched back, I did. It landed in the back of the head. Do I think he could have continued? I do, but that's not my job to say. So the no contest, it is what it is. But we get to put all that behind us on the 26th. I think I'm so much better of a fighter than I was when the first time we fought. And I'm sure Rick's been in the lab as well, evolving. So I'm excited, man. I don't like fights where I'm a huge favorite or a huge underdog, and I think this will be a close one. I think the last fight, the longer it went, the more of a dog fight it would have been. I think it would have started leaning my way, that wrestler grind mentality. So yeah, man, I'm excited. We are packing this place out. Ticket sales have been flying, and Rick and I get to stand in front. It's in the small circle this time. We get to bang it out. So I hope he's training hard. I'm sure he is. He's a professional. I have been as well, and I see violence. It's going to be good.
Yeah, you're going to have the hometown crowd behind you, of course. I'm sure a lot of your students, a lot of your teammates all going to be there cheering you on. So I'm sure that's going to give you a little bit of advantage. One thing that also, obviously your other two fights at 155. What's it like for you to cut down to 145? Is this somewhere you want to fight in both weight classes? Is it just a situation, a one-off here?
Yeah, whatever fights are intriguing. The Mara fight was at 55. He's a big dude, but that was a fight we were supposed to do at King of the Cage. So I'm a 45er. 55 is way too big for me. It's a little more discipline, but 45 is where I belong. So that's where I would prefer to stay for the rest of my career unless something intriguing pops up.
All right, well, we're looking forward to this rematch. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us. Of course, make sure you check out Brandon Bushaw versus Slick Rick Caruso, October 26th. Going to be down in Myrtle Beach. Looking forward to these guys rematching and finishing their first matchup.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach, here from the Giants. But they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
I do think they come back, and I think they win this game, but they've got to do it decisively. I think they've got to get that confidence back because they went out there, and like I said earlier, Kentucky almost beat Georgia. Kentucky almost did beat Ole Miss, and I think what you're going to see in this conference, if you don't play well and you're a top 10 team in the SEC, you're going to get knocked out by one of those top 25 teams in the SEC if you're not ready to play.
Powered by SportsGrid.
He already has more than 1,000 yards. The last three running backs to win the Heisman, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, Reggie Bush, did not have more than 650 in their opening 5 games of the year. Ashton Genty on pace to strike the pose in December.
Statistics matter. Blow every record out of the water, and he will be a Heisman. Disgraceful performance by the head coach, not Gene.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. And while we have this awesome card coming up this weekend, we have so many great fights coming up down the line in the next couple weeks, the rest of this month. We got to make sure we take good looks at those. And one of those is a card we talked about last week that's going to be happening down in Myrtle Beach, a Prospect Series card. Right after, of course, that card out there in Denver, we're going to go right back into action the next night. And one of the guys who's going to be majorly featured on that card is, of course, Slick Rick Caruso. Going to be fighting there against Brandon Bushaw in a rematch of their no contest earlier that they had. And now we bring on Slick Rick. And Rick, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. And now, you're coming into this fight against Bushaw. The first fight was ruled a no contest because of the accidental shot to the back of the head. What did you see, as you were in that fight? What were your feeling as it was going on? How did you feel it was going before, obviously, the refs stepped in there and changed what happened?
I got to be PC. The fight was 100% going my way. I mean, we were swinging and banging, as we like to say. I dropped him twice at the end of the first. I mean, it was going exactly how we wanted it to go. And we had our fun in the first round. We came out the second round to just finish out the boxing and stick to the game plan and finish the opponent. Some crazy stuff happened, and I don't know what the ref decided why we stopped it early, but we didn't get the 5 minutes for the accidental foul. So, on the plus side, instead of being able to finish the fight that night, here we are, main event, Myrtle Beach, his hometown. A year or so later, let's kick it now, man. I'll take it.
Now, did you feel, as you said, you felt it was going your way? Did you feel there was any intention in what would happen? You think it was just things happen sometimes in a fight, everyone moving around trying to, dodge a move? Or how did you feel when that shot was landed?
It was definitely not intentional. While we may not like each other while we're fighting, he's not a bad guy at all. He didn't try to hit me in the back of the head. It was just where we were at and the way the fight happened, the way my head was turned, the way the punch came. Stuff happens. I would have loved to have had the full 5 minutes you should get for an accidental foul. However, I guess they deemed we didn't need that. So, which was kind of cool. I actually did fail. I've never failed a concussion test in my life, and I failed the concussion test three times after that fight for the following week. And then passed it, and then we were back fighting. So all was good. Things may have happened, may not have happened. I would have loved to have finished the fight, so they give us the opportunity now. We get to finish it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't come right away. You had to fight a couple fights. You had the win against Williams, and you lost to Ibarola. Was it a situation where you guys were both saying, "Hey, I want this fight," and they're like, "You know what? Let's go a different direction," or did you just not even get the chance to voice that before they threw other opponents your way?
I think we both wanted the fight. However, when we were voicing wanting the fight, matchmakers and a few other people even said, "We'll look at this fight when we come back to Myrtle Beach," and here we are, Myrtle Beach. It's time to get it done now. I mean, it happened the exact way Shook said it would happen. It was just out of chance. Happened actually the day I signed the contract this year, or the day it was offered to me. My memories actually had Shook on it with someone saying this fight needed to happen, and Shook was like, "Hey, it just might happen when we could go back to Myrtle Beach," and here we are, Myrtle Beach. Main event. I'm jumping up a weight class again. This does nothing for my rankings or anything like that. Ideally, I do want to be right back into contention fighting Ibarola or somebody like that again. Maybe I can get a shot with Ryan again and go from there. But we're going to fight at 145. I think Brandon's last fight was at 55, so he's got to come down to 45 and beat me again. It is what it is. I just like to fight. So as long as he comes in at 45, I'm going to be underweight. I'm already underweight. I'll walk less than that. But we get to finish what we started, and having that unfinished business absolutely sucks.
There you go. So it was all about the venue. It was all about, the opportunity there, giving it back to the fans that wanted to see it the first time, holding it off until they got to see it, and we get it now on this card. And you actually jumped ahead to a question I had coming up for you because you talk about the weight class situation there. Like you've had some, a bunch of fights at 135. You had some at 145. The first one, this one was. Now it is again. I was going to ask if maybe if you wanted to go up in weight class, if that was going to be a better barometer for where you. But apparently, you want 135, and you just got to get things figured out there.
Yeah, I could actually make 25. They just got to pay me for it. That's making that lifestyle change and making that weight cut right there would take a little bit more dedication. I can make 135 in the morning. I've said that since I wrestled in high school, and I can still do it now. So if need, even trying to put on weight doesn't really work. So, but I want to fight Brandon. I like the fight with Brandon. A couple of fights at 45 do seem interesting. Most of the time when I've taken a fight at 45, it's been super last-minute notice, filling in, helping out the show, Jack Claffey, Bouchard, and so on. But, again, as usual, man, I just like to fight. Weight's just a number. Age is just a number. I'm getting older. Hair's getting grayer. Punches still come hard and fast, though.
There you go. I try to tell my wife the same thing. You want me to lose the weight? I got to have some incentive. So far, nothing has been offered on my side. Hopefully the BKFC comes your way with something if they want that to happen. But now, what are you looking forward to in this fight? What do you think? Is there any change in game plan from the first one, or it's just it was working the way you wanted to go the first one? Just do the same thing and, just hope some kind of fate doesn't intervene and screw things up like it did before?
I think if I fought the exact same way, then I'd be kind of not a student of the game and not very smart. We have some changes coming. I feel like if the fight goes the same way it did last time, that man does not win any of those exchanges. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit tougher because he's a little bit wiser to what we've got going on. But we're, game plans to go out there and put hands on him. Knuckles.
Very simple. Sticking right to what needs to get the win. I appreciate that. Slick Rick Caruso, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to seeing you and Bouchard re-engage with each other at Myrtle Beach at the end of this month, October 26th. Looking forward to that card and seeing what we have going on with you guys finally finishing your matchup.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach, here from the Giants. But they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, as we wrap up another episode of Bare Knuckle Fighting main event here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much to our guests for joining us today, especially our man Chris Lights Out Lytle, who was basically talking to us right before he jumps in the car, heads to the airport, and flies over to Spain, although I don't even think he has a direct flight. I saw him talking with our man Sosha earlier in the day and has to go through Philly, as all things BKFC do. So he will be flying out to Philly, then flying to Spain pretty much right away. so he's going to make that long trek, but made time for us. Always a fan of the show. We appreciate his time as he broke down the fights with us that we're going to be seeing from Marbella, Spain this weekend. Also great to talk to Slick Rick Caruso and Brandon Bushaw, who are going to be fighting each other in Myrtle Beach at the end of this month, rematching their no contest from last year. Of course, both of these guys have had this fight on their mind ever since it ended, wanting to finish their business here, and they will get a chance to do so back in front of the crowds that were rooting for them earlier, back in front of the Carolinas, where the first fight happened as well, and of course where Brandon Bushaw makes his home and career down there in Myrtle Beach. So it should be an awesome fight between those guys at the end of the month as well. We talked about this card coming up this weekend over in Spain. First one ever in Spain, first one ever on DAZN for the BKFC, and this big deal that they did with their new broadcast partner. But, of course, there are other fights that we didn't even get to mention because this is a stacked card. You don't usually see 3 title fights like we are seeing and like we have seen added to it, with that last one, the Mundell fight, being added against Danny Christie kind of later in the mix when his fight with King Mo fell through. So now, when you have that many, good fights at the top, you got to slide some things down, as we have with some big debuts that we are going to see for the BKFC. Now, both these fighters were actually involved with the press conference they had over in Spain a couple months ago, which shows you how exciting the BKFC is to have them involved. And that is, of course, the fights of Dan Chapman and Hannah Rankin. So let's break down those fights. Let's not just ignore those. Give them the time that they deserve, as Dan Chapman makes his BKFC debut against Mike Yurik. Yurik, the Czech, started in wrestling, but then has fought in boxing, in MMA, and now in bare knuckle fighting, he is 6-0. So plenty of experience, even though he is fighting for the first time in the BKFC. He's fast, but like many guys with that wrestling background, with that MMA background, he also likes to clinch. So this is going to be something interesting to see if he uses that, very well against Chapman, who comes from, of course, a boxing background, a glove boxing background to begin with. He was the first Welshman to win the Commonwealth Youth Games there in 2008, a champion over in the UK. Looked like he was on his way to being an Olympic fighter for his home country, but unfortunately, tragedy struck there, almost tragedy, near tragedy for him, as he got into a motorcycle accident that made people wonder if he'd ever even walk again, let alone fight. But he worked his way back, was lucky to survive, worked his way back into the fighting world by teaching others while he was on the men, teaching children, and then eventually got into working with disabled kids as well, teaching them boxing. And then after that, went on to become a bare knuckle fighter here, 5-0 in the UK and other organizations. And now he makes his BKFC debut, of course, as I said, was at the press conference there, being introduced. People are excited to have him involved that know the bare knuckle scene over in Europe. And we're excited to see him for the first time under the BKFC banner. And apparently looking to fight in multiple divisions. This isn't just a situation where he's coming in at this weight class and that's where he's going to be at featherweight. He said he'll fight 135, fight 155. He's just excited to be involved with the BKFC, excited to make his debut in Marbella, Spain. And we're excited to see what he does against Yurik, a very tough opponent. Of course, not just giving him anybody, just a rollover guy who can't win in the BKFC over there. They're giving him a tough dude who's got just as much chance to win as he does. So it'll be very interesting to see him make his debut there, as well as we'll see Hannah Rankin. She's going to be fighting, of course, against Deborah Melhorn there. I think this one has changed a couple times there since we saw Rankin first get announced on this card. Both of them are going to be making their BKFC debuts. But Hannah, the classical warrior, Rankin, a Scottish boxer, has held both the WBA and IBO female super welterweight world titles. So just like we talked about with also No Doubt Trout, massive experience in the glove boxing scene. We'll see how that plays out when she takes them off for the first time here with the BKFC. Use those hands for more than just fighting too, though. As we talk about with our guy James Lights Out Lily, the punching poet, she is an accomplished bassoonist, actually has a master's from the Royal Academy of Music in London with that bassoon. So very important for her to use those hands in many fashions, and now she'll do it for the first time without protection here with the BKFC. Has knockout power and tends to overwhelm her opponents in her previous fights with glove boxing. We'll see if she does the same thing here against Melhorn over in Marbella, Spain. So some great title fights we're looking forward to watching, as well as some debuts for the BKFC with some big names from boxing coming over, crossing over, and trying for the first time their hands in the world of bare knuckle fighting. Looking forward to all that. We'll talk to you next week. We'll recap a lot of these fights here on SportsGrid. Thank you so much for joining us.